Hey everybody, welcome back. Today I just want to make a video about Christianity because I'm really sick and tired of this whole Christianity versus atheist debate. Um, I think Christians are absolutely missing the point uh, because it's real simple. If you're not a homeless beggar, you're not a Christian because that's what Jesus taught. He walked around in rags, he had no possessions. I think it's because he was a sort of cynic philosopher. I think these Gnostics, from which Jesus derived, the mythical Jesus character derived, uh, was a cynic philosopher type of guy. They didn't believe in having any possessions. They lived outside. They wore, they had a robe and a bowl, and the most famous cynic philosopher was Diogenes, in case you want to look into that. Quite an interesting character, one of the more interesting Greek philosophers. Probably the most intelligent Greek philosopher because a lot of the Greek philosophers just talk about nonsense and they just try to sound really smart talking about nothing. But he said, consider the lilies. Jesus, don't worry about where your next meal is going to come from. Don't worry about what you're going to wear. Um, so, unless you're living that life, which I have, if you've followed my videos on this channel, you can see that I was living without any possessions for 5 years, and I was a wandering monk, and I was a beggar. So, and I have good reasons for that. I think that's the way to attain enlightenment, and I think that's why Buddhists are beggars. A fully ordained Buddhist monk, and the sannyasi in India are the fourth stage of the Vedic ashram system, and they are beggars. And I think there's a reason for that. the the cynic philosophers were beggars as well. Vulnerability, being needy, dependent, asking for help. That's a childlike state. So basically, our culture has arrested development. That's what narcissism is. And so, borderline personality disorder, um, all domesticated animals are infantile. So what we're suffering from is a state of arrested development. And in order to continue that development, in order to become enlightened, which means fully develop your brain, you've got to go back to that point when you were a baby and you were dependent and needy and you weren't allowed to be, and dirty and stinky and rambunctious and angry and aggressive and socially unacceptable and you know if you weren't allowed to be these things when it was appropriate for you to do so, when it was age appropriate for you to do so, because your mother was a narcissist and she had no emotional regulation, she couldn't tolerate your emotions, she couldn't tolerate your authenticity. That's another thing, being authentically human, um, instead of being civilized and being a false self and being a persona. So there's a lot to it, but I think that there is some very profound keys to attaining enlightenment in this lifestyle of giving up all possessions. That's called asceticism. Jesus was an ascetic. He's sort of the archetypal ascetic. Buddha as well. And you always see the Buddhas in ancient Chinese paintings depicted as these happy, fat beggars. So there's something to it. And I've lived it and I understand it, and I can explain that to you. And it has a profound impact on my brain development and my maturity. And it's really about healing from complex PTSD and activating and integrating other networks in the brain besides the default mode network, which is really the narcissistic part of the brain. So according to Otto Kernberg, narcissism is a defense against borderline personality disorder, which is abandonment, trauma, complex PTSD, and emotional dysregulation. It really boils down to those things. And so we could think of it like, okay, your limbic brain is the borderline personality disorder. It didn't get its emotional needs met as a child. It's emotionally dysregulated. It can't control its emotions. It's extremely needy and yet has disorganized attachment. And it's just a train wreck, a mess. And this is the average person in our society in the limbic region of the brain. And so we block that part out in order to cope, and we defaulted to what we call the default mode network. And that network is narcissistic, and it only cares about, well, what does this have to do with me? Self-centered. And it's the source of all the defense mechanisms, Oh, you want to criticize me? Well, you're the problem, not me. Oh, that's what's causing it. My TV was causing all the light changes. Anyway, sorry. All right, so this narcissism is the default mode network as a defense against the emotionally dysregulated limbic brain. Default mode networks in the cortex, medial, prefrontal, and posterior areas of the anyway. So complex PTSD and unmet needs as a child. So the ascetic lifestyle and the mendicancy, which is the formal word for begging, which is a sacred part of many spiritual practices around the world throughout time, heal for many reasons, heal this complex PTSD, because you're allowing yourself to regress to the stage of life when the development became arrested. That way, these needs are now being met. Now, development can continue. So what we call enlightenment is really just neurodevelopmental maturity. And our society is in a state of arrested development and regression. But it's stuck. Now, let's get back to Christianity. Now that we've cleared up, the fact that you're not really a Christian because you're not a homeless beggar. You might want to find a different religion because you're clearly not a Christian. It's that simple. And I think you should also, before we move on, take note that it's a narcissistic religion, and it has a narcissistic God, which, by the way, there are 3 gods in the Bible. The first one is El Shaddai. Israel, Israelites. All right. Yahweh, who is the son of El. And then there's Zeus in the New Testament. Why is it Zeus? Well, that was the prominent god of the time. And Jesus is clearly a ripoff of, among other gods, Dionysus, the god of wine. Everywhere he went, he had a huge following, and he was celebrated as he entered the town because he's the wine entering the town. Everybody's happy. It's a time of partying. It's symbolism, guys. It's myth, metaphor. It was Odin that hung himself from the world tree and stabbed himself with his spear. Not Jesus. Jesus was a Gnostic teacher. The divine child, of the Virgin Mother, that's Isis, Egyptian. He's Horus. He's an incarnation of his father Osiris. Isis is a virgin who it's immaculate conception because she was magically impregnated by the dead husband Osiris, and why don't you study mythology? If you're interested in religion, you should be studying mythology, because that's what it is. Born on December 25th, Horus. These are archetypes, Dionysus, God's only begotten son, which means that he was born of his father. Zeus accidentally killed Dionysus' mother, so he took Dionysus out of the womb and put him in his thigh until he was ready to be born. So he was born again. Begotten by his father. Jesus rose from the dead on the 3rd day. Dionysus is resurrected every 3 years. All right, I hope this helps. Thanks for watching. Take care of yourself.